Hey, what's up guys? Sir Emanon here, and by the time you guys are seeing this, it's gonna be 2021. So I want to take this time to go ahead and wish each and every single one of you all a very happy new year. Hope you guys are having a great holiday season, spending time with the family if you can, staying safe, taking care of yourselves, and all that good stuff. 2020 was a pretty rough year for most of us, to put it mildly, but it was a pretty strong year in terms of growth in the channel. So I'm very happy about that, and I want to thank each of you guys for making that possible. And I want to go ahead and hopefully ride this wave of momentum into 2021. So here's to a strong year, and we're going to kick it off with the very first episode of Road to 1000 DuelingBook rating for the year. And it's going to be day 3 of testing the Fam Knight deck. If you guys haven't seen the other episodes in the series, would recommend checking those out. I'll leave a link to the playlist in both the card in the top right as well as the description box below. But we're going to go ahead and check out the list before we get started, and this is the exact same list as Wednesday, if you guys haven't noticed. Didn't make any changes. I was pretty satisfied with it overall, and I do just want to have a bit of a bigger sample size, if you will, just playing around a bit more with the same list. And I believe it's also going to be the same list for Monday's episode if I have planned everything out accordingly the way that I want to. But, not too much else to say here, so let's just go ahead and carry on into the match. So this is actually going to be a matchup against Salamangreat. I didn't actually mention that, but you guys read the title already, so not any surprise to you guys. So let's just go ahead and get started here. Also, shout out to my opponent, CM Papa, for also being a viewer of the channel. It's super cool that I've been running into you guys in DuelingBook ladder. Super nice. But our opponent is going to go ahead and win the RPS, so we're going to be going second. Our opening hand is going to be Fog Blade, Danger Tsuchinoko, Cosmic Cyclone, Torn Scales, as well as the Skullmeisters. So this is quite a good hand for going second. We seem to draw this card quite a lot, but I mean, I'm not really complaining because it's a very strong starter, of course. We also have a hand trap that is, incidentally quite good against Salamangreat. It's not as strong as particularly DD Crow, but this card's good in the format, so happy to see it here. But apart from that, we have a pretty capable hand of going second. So opponent is going to start off in main phase 1, normal sending the copy of Salamangreat Foxy. That's going to go ahead and reveal 3 cards, revealing the Chalice, Jack Jaguar, as well as Ghost Bell. Forbidden Chalice is pretty interesting. I presume it's for similar reasons as to why you'd run Droplet, maybe to stop like Vanity's Ruler or VFD. Granted, it's not as powerful, but it also requires fewer cards, so pretty interesting tech to maybe test out a little bit. But of course, going to pick up the Jack Jaguar off of that Foxy, and then follow that up by a copy of Signet Mining. That's going to pitch the Jack Jaguar to pick up a copy of Gazelle. So that's going to be a prime opportunity to use this Gazelle in hand effect. That's going to special summon itself. And from this position, we're going to see Gazelle send a Salad card. And here I was anticipating a trap, but my opponent goes for a Falco instead. So I have to kind of like rewire the way that my opponent is like sequencing this play. So, of course, my intention was going to hit Jaguar off the Skullmeister so he couldn't recur Gazelle. But now he's going to actually be able to get Gazelle no matter what, because he's going to go to use the Falco on the Gazelle. And I thought about using Meister here, but I'm like, there's not really any point because my opponent is going to just have this Gazelle back in hand no matter what, because either it's going to be off the Falco here, or he's just going to link into a Wolf, go use Jaguar to recur something, and then use Wolf Effect to add back the Gazelle anyways. So I decided to just hold the Meister, and I'm still going to use it on the Jack Jaguar just because it recycles the resource itself. So the small things maybe could add up. But we're going to see my opponent use the Foxy to turn it into a copy of Balinx. That's going to fetch a copy of the Sanctuary. And now my opponent is going to use the Sanctuary to relink this Balinx into another copy before firing off the Jack Jaguar in the graveyard, which I will use the Meister on. He was targeting the Balinx there. So even though, the reason why I do this, by the way, is that I realize at this point when he has 2 monsters instead of like any of the Salad traps is that my opponent is prioritizing Dweller. And Dweller is really good against Phantom Knights, so I have to prevent that at all costs. And even though it's like, maybe not the highest value Meister, it is one that I think is worthwhile, just because, this hand currently cannot be Abyss Dweller. So my opponent then goes and instead just links away his 2 monsters into a copy of the Sunlight Wolf, sets 2 back row and passes. And for turn, of course, we draw Droplet, which is the answer to Dweller. So, unfortunate there, but had to, of course, use it just given the way the rest of our hand was looking at the time. So at this point, I decided to actually go and enter main phase and fire off this Cosmic Cyclone right off the bat. I normally dislike shotgunning this kind of card because blind hitting is not really that great in a lot of cases, but this is not a matchup where I get rewarded for holding Cosmic because if my opponent does have Rage or Roar hard drawn, particularly Roar, I want to make sure that I can force it out if possible. Simply because if I play into it, then it's not going to be it's not going to be good for me. In other matchups, you can definitely afford to hold this, like Eldritch, for example, because chaining it to Golden Lands is good, or like chaining it to Chuche is fine. But this is obviously not a matchup where you can afford to do that. Unfortunately, the card I hit is another Cosmic Cyclone, so that's not going to actually help insulate my plays because this will only matter if I end up setting like a Fog Blade, right? So not the hit that I would have liked. So we're just going to carry on here. We're going to normal summon the scales, of course, and use that effect. And here we actually make the misplay that's possibly going to cost the entire game here. And that's actually pitching the Tsuchinoko. And it seems weird, right? Because, you can discard the Tsuchinoko and, get the Torrent Scales effect, and then Tsuchinoko can bring itself back. And that's like a lot of value, right? But there's two problems to this. One, this droplet is dead right now. So cycling out possibly the droplet to draw into a fresh extender would have been nice. But the bigger reason is that I should have pitched the Fog Blade instead. And if you notice the episode last time on Wednesday against, oh gosh, I already forget the matchup. But, I guess Trap Shaddolls, or Dogmatica Shaddolls, where my opponent used like Ice Dragon's Prison and the traps helped actually insulate against that. That would have actually been nice here just because we're going second, and when you're playing into a board, you want ways to be able to just potentially get more extenders if your plays do get stopped, and this is like one of the key ways to do that. So definitely was a mistake there, and you'll see why that comes back to bite me. Chalice is going to actually be changed to the Torrent Scale, so that's kind of the first interruption there. And of course, would have liked to have hit that with the Cosmic of that we started off with, but that's not something that I could have actively changed necessarily. So I'm not going to pin the loss on that, especially when we could have, again, just pitched the Fall Blade and we would have been in a better spot. But the snake goes ahead and comes out from its own effect. And then we're going to link off into Cherubini. We're now in a position where if any of our plays get disrupted, we just kind of have to pass. And that's never really a good thing. So we're going to use the Cherubini to send Graph targeting itself. Graph is going to then bring out a copy of Seer from deck. And then here we're going to link our monsters away into a copy of Rusty and use the Seer to bring back the Cherubini. Nothing too surprising here. We don't have any other extenders, so that's all we can really do. But here we're going to use the Rusty, and that is going to be met with Ash. And in some cases, getting Ash on your Rusty is not the end of the world, but in this case, it definitely is very problematic because we just have no other extension. If, again, we had this Fall Blade in Graveyard, we could actually banish it to bring back the Torrent Scale and then use that plus the Cherubini to go into Verite Anaconda, and that would have been very nice. But unfortunately, we do not have that because we, again, left this in hand. So you can see this is where it ultimately would have made a big difference because having a Dragoon on board versus not having a Dragoon on board, especially in this matchup, it makes all the difference for sure. So at this stage, we can't really do anything, so we just have to go and enter the battle phase and just do a 300 damage while he protects his wolf with a Balinx. But it's not looking too good. Here I set the Fall Blade and the Droplet and then pass. I probably should have kept this in hand. It's debatable actually, because like this can help stop my opponent's plays, but at the same time, it's also kind of vulnerable. But you'll see what I mean. But yeah, my opponent's gonna go and enter the main phase. Like this is like fine just because it can send away maybe the Fall Blade or the Cherubini, which is kind of my mindset at the time. But at this point, honestly, we kind of already lost the game just because we misplayed our last turn. But Gazelle is going to be normal summoned, and here I decide to just actually go ahead and Fall Blade it because I know that if my opponent just starts looping the traps, then I absolutely can't win. So I figure it's a worthwhile trade. Falco is going to bounce Gazelle. That puts the Fall Blade in grave. Unfortunately, we don't have any Dark Xyz to make Rusty live for the pop. But Falco is going to come back. And now my opponent then uses the Jack Jaguar, going to recycle the Foxy and bring that back. And then going to trigger the Wolf here to actually try and add back Ash. I contemplate using the Droplet here, but I decided to let it go because my opponent has materials for Dweller, and that's now what I'm kind of saving it for. But my opponent goes a different route completely and actually just goes straight up into Heatleo. So I didn't even get value off this Droplet. I mean, granted, the Ash that he added back isn't going to be the reason why I lose the game. It's the reason why I'm going to lose is that I'm just going to be deprived of all my resources because it's just going to break my board completely. But yeah, I mean, this really wouldn't have actually gotten any value. Like I negated the one thing that I profitably got value off of, which was the gazelle when I used the fog blade. But since then, there wasn't really anything super impactful that I could have negated off the droplet. But the Helio is just going to go and shuffle back the droplet, and he gets to trigger Gazelle as well since he normal summoned it and didn't actually use it as a hand effect to special. So then he's going to turn the Gazelle and the Falco into the update jammer, and I know where this is going. This is going straight into a transcode talker, which is going to bring back the update jammer, and then go into a copy of Axis Code Talker. That's going to gain 3k, and then going to banish 2 to pop my whole board. And this is a 53 Axis Code Talker that can attack twice because of the update jammer. And here I do math in the battle phase, and I actually calculate that if I use a Fog Blade here, I can actually live in terms of the damage. So I'm going to use Fog Blade to bring back the Rusty, and also use the Torrent skill effect to bring it back. Of course, they're both going to die anyway to battle, but at least we are still technically in the game. This gets banished. I fix it later. But yeah, my opponent is going to just set a card, and I know the last card in hand is Ash as well, so it's like there's not really any realistic top deck at this moment in time, but let's just see. It's Kagemucha Knight, and my opponent has Strike anyways, so yeah, no matter what I top decked, I wasn't winning that one. So yeah, the mistake that I made was essentially actually just pitching the Snake instead of the Fog Blade, ironically enough. But that's kind of why it's good to go over these kinds of replays, because you can pick out misplays that you might not, initially suspect, because that was a relatively intuitive play, right? Where, just pitch the Snake. It just seems super obvious, but that ended up being the wrong play. And that's something you can take away from experiences like this. But we're going to go ahead and now move into... Oh, actually, before we move into game 2, almost forgot about siding again. So here's the siding plan into game number 2. So this is us going first. So I reason that even though Nibiru is like not the greatest if I can set up, if my opponent does hand trap me, I could hand trap them back potentially and then just try and play next turn. So that's decent. I figure it's just better than droplet in that case. But apart from that, really nothing too much to say here. But we're just going to go and now carry on into game number 2. If you guys are enjoying this commentary, definitely be sure to leave a like in the video and consider subscribing if you're new here and enjoy commentaries similar to this style of video. But we're going first, and our opening hand is Red Ice Fusion, Skullmeister, Ancient Cloak, Silent Boots, and a Libic. So we drew the only hard Garnet in the entire deck, which is really annoying, but it is what it is. And here, obviously, I have the choice between trying to make a play or going for Red Ice Fusion. And I figure if my opponent has Ash, I really do not want to, I really do not want to sit on just Skullmeister and not really have any play. So I decided to actually just go for, not the Red Ice Fusion stuff, because I figure setting up like Fog Blades and potentially like Evil Swarm Nightmare, if I was able to do, like the Break Sword, get popped by Rusty play and just make Nightmare, that would be pretty good. So I decided to just go for this play instead, in the event that, I try and actually manage to combo off here. But we're going to normal the Ancient Cloak and then go for Silent Boots. Then link those away into a copy of Cherubini. That's going to send a Graph, and then Graph Effect, going to summon out Seer. And then here, I think for a little bit, I use the Cloak Effect to search for actually another copy of Boots just as follow-up. This could have arguably just been Shea Brigandine, just as another extender. And that possibly could have been the better play, as I'll mention a bit later. But here I go ahead and actually special the Libic by its own effect, since it is functionally just an extender at this point. And then I go into the Levier. This is like one of the standard-ish plays, where like if you can make a way into a Cherubini and you have a Cloak in Graveyard, you can do this play where you Levier back the Cloak as for one follow-up, but for another it allows you to kind of just ladder up into Rusty since you'll be detaching the Seer here. So yeah, Levier going to bring back the Ancient Cloak, and then Seer is going to bring back the Graph. So now we have like extra materials. And here is where we go and make Rusty. So normally off this Rusty, what you're going to do is send Torrent Scales and then set a back row and then trigger the Torrent Scale by banishing the Spirits. But our Rusty does get ashed again. So see, Red Ice Fusion would have gotten ashed, and then we would have passed and literally just Meister, and that would have been not very good. But now we're in an awkward spot because we can't make Verite Anaconda since, well, we could, but our Red Ice Fusion is in hand. So I'm thinking, maybe I should have gotten the Shea Brigandine off of the Cloak, because This way I could maybe go for like a Masquerena, and that would have been like at least decent, since this is going to be dead in hand anyways. But I decided to just go ahead and boost the Rusty. And I still could technically go Masquerena, because I'm going to use the Boots effect here. And that's going to search for a copy of Fogblade. And technically, right, I could negate something with Fogblade. If it links it off, it sets up the graveyard. So I can IP into something on my opponent's turn. But I decided actually, it's probably better to just leave Levier and hope I don't die. And hope that the Fogblade and the Meister get me there. Because this will just represent better follow-up. So I decided to maybe be play a little bit risky and just set Fogblade and pass here. It's not pretty. This could, again, very well just be Masquerena. If I had the Brigandine, that probably would have been the play, just because it would have made Unicorn like a lot more. It would have made Unicorn a lot less conditional in the sense that this doesn't have to go to graveyard. This being the Fogblade, that is. But my opponent reveals the hand of double Dark Ruler, double Cosmic, and then I guess the last card was a Spinny. So yeah, my opponent actually just straight up scoops this one. So I guess, it was totally fine that we weren't able to make the Dragoon because my opponent just couldn't play the game anyways. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of a case of getting lucky. I'm not going to lie. But in game number 3 here, we're going to be going second again. So we're going to have to try and contend through a board as well. So our opener is a copy of Kagamucha Knight, Ancient Cloak, Silent Boots, Torrent Scales, and Tour Guide. This is kind of what you don't like to see, is that Torrent Scales and Tour Guide are both great normal summons, but like which one do you pick? Especially because we drew Kagamucha Knight as well. So there's a lot of places to get value here. But we drew no hand traps, unfortunately, so opponent is just going to be able to combo off here. My opponent is going to start up with a copy of Foxy again, similar to game 1, but reveals the Sanctuary as the only salad card. So, I mean, my opponent could add it here or add it later. My opponent decides to do it later, just keeping that there for when he just makes Baelings right now. So he's going to do Gazelle 1, Baelings 2. So adding the Sanctuary, and then going for Gazelle. Gazelle then going to send a copy of Falco. And my opponent is going to use Falco on the Gazelle here to add it back to hand. And that is the 4th summon. So this is 1, Baelings 2, Gazelle 3, and then Falco 4. So he's playing around Nibiru, and he's just going to set and pass. We draw a copy of Lightning Storm, which is functionally just an MST at this point, but I'm happy to see it. Oh, I did not share my sighting pattern for going to game 3. I'm so sorry. Let's do that real fast. So this is the sighting going into game 3. What I do is I side out Cosmic for the blowout cards, going second, being the Lightning Storm. Just because I want to snipe out multiple back row, or like wipe away the entire back row. Similar logic to the Pankratops and the Feather Duster. I don't put in Reboot because my opponent was like playing Chalice and stuff. So I just want to ensure that the back row wipes are effective. And Pankratops is just a good generic spine second card, but keeping it the Nibiru there. Not too much else to say. It is a solid matchup, so that's a pretty stable card to keep in. But yeah, almost forgot about that. But yeah, my opponent is just going to go ahead and pass. So we draw the Lightning Storm, like I mentioned, and we're just going to 1 for 1 here. It is a Goza match, which I found to be a little bit strange, but then again, I make use of Levier quite a lot, so this actually is relatively decent. I'm not sure if I would keep it in post side or side it in this matchup, but it definitely does have its uses. But here I'm gonna actually go for the Tour Guide over the Torrent Scale line, just because I want to go into Appaloosa, and this is like one of the best ways to do it. Because like obviously now that I cleared the back row, I have to worry about the hand traps. And there's 2 unknowns because we know 2 of the cards being Gazelle and Sanctuary. So we have to play around potential hand traps here. So we just go ahead and use Tour Guide, chain Kagamucha Knight. We're going to go for Graph off the Tour Guide, then link that as well as the Kagamucha Knight into the Cherubini. Then use Graph's effect for Seer. And then here we're going to think on how we want to use this Cherubini. I decided to use it here to send a copy of Ancient Cloak, just because I already have a lot of the setup needed. So like normally with this kind of play, you would try and like use the cloak to search boots, and then you can over for Levier, and then you can like detach the non-seer to get back the cloak, and then make everything in Appaloosa, so you bring back the Cherubini, and then you would have special boots after you summon the cloak back, right? But yeah, like you have everything you need for Rusty and Appaloosa there. But because of the way this hand has shaped out, we can actually use it a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and search Hcabe because we already have the boots. And I'm actually just going to skip Levier and go straight into Appaloosa. This way my opponent has like fewer windows to kind of stop my play, because I figure I can just go for no decay. Now my opponent uses Ghost Bell when I go for the Seer, and I'm like, my opponent may be trying to bait Nibiru. Here, you could argue that I should have negated the Ghost Spell. But at the same time, right, the way it works is that Appaloosa has to lower its attack in order to negate anything. So if I go Seer chilling 1, Ghost Spell chilling 2, Appaloosa chilling 3, and then Nibiru chilling 4, the chain will resolve, Nibiru will hit the board, and then it'll wipe out the Appaloosa, so it's no longer able to have attack since it's not on the field. It can't reach its attack, so it can't negate the Ghost Spell, and now the Ghost Spell will negate the Seer. So then I'll be stuck with just the token anyways. So I figured, yeah, it's not really worth losing to Nibiru. I just want to keep this Appaloosa on the board at this point. So I just actually let the Ghost Bell go. I don't want to take any chances, because I can still actually make a good enough play here. We go for the Hcabe Brigandine, since we don't have any traps in grave. Summon it, and then we go for a Silent Boots. We're going to link away the Hcabe Brigandine for a copy of Link Spider, and then link those away for Verite Anaconda. It's not rusty, but it's pretty decent. Obviously, it's Dragoon plus Appaloosa, which should be enough to win the game, because we know 2 of the cards. We know Gazelle, and we know Sanctuary. So we can basically stop whatever the last card might be, even like with counting for what he draws for turn. Assuming that it's not like just 2 blowout like spells, like maybe a Dark Ruler if he kept that going first for some reason. But we're going to Dragoon pop the board here and deal 1300. And then my opponent just takes all the damage before I even hit the battle phase. And then we go into main phase 2. We go Silent Boots. And my opponent's actually just going to draw his next card and concede. Not right away because we have a little bit of a chat. But yeah, my opponent reveals that the last card in hand was a Signet Mining that he opted not to use. Which makes sense because he was playing around Nibiru regardless. So like it didn't actually get into anything that turn. So he just kept it. And then the card he drew for turn was a copy of Will. And we knew these 2, of course. So, yeah, like Will plus Mining, it would have been like kind of weird. Because he just didn't have enough cards to profitably pitch off the Mining. And there's just not really any way you could beat the Appaloosa plus Fog Blade plus Dragoon. Because I was probably just going to negate the Will. And that would have just been pretty much the end of it, because no matter what my opponent would have tried to do, I would have just had negates for the monster effects. Plus my opponent is on 400 life points, so any monster my opponent keeps on board that doesn't deal with Dragoon is just going to be the cause of the burn damage. But yeah, even though game 2 was kind of just me getting a little bit lucky there, this was still a pretty good showcase of trying to play conservatively when you don't know exactly what your opponent has. I could have negated the Ghost Spell there, and I would have been a lot better in terms of the board I would have produced because my opponent didn't have Nibiru. But again, I just did not want to take that risk. If I do lose to Nibiru right there, that's just my own fault. Granted, again, I could have used the Hcabe Brigandine and go for the Silent Boots afterward anyways, so maybe it was worth going for. But at the same time, I just didn't want to do it. I figured that this was going to be safe enough, and ended up being worth it because, again, just given the fact that my opponent had very few cards I didn't know, I was pretty slated to be in a strong position that game. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like as well as any thoughts or your feedback in the comments. Subscribe for more informative and competitive video content. If you want to, you can follow me on all social media platforms or support me via Patreon and TCG Player. All the links in the description as usual. And until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys.